No, thank you.
That's interesting. So.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Shropshire Cabinet meeting, Shropshire Council Cabinet meeting of Wednesday, the 22nd of March. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and to assist people watching or listening online, can I remind members to identify your name and role before speaking, please. Moving on to the agenda, item number 1, apologies for absence. Unfortunately, we've had, sadly, apologies from Councillor Dean Carroll this morning. So please bear with me because I will be taking Dean's 3 reports today. They're time sensitive. I didn't want to withdraw them. Item number 2, disclosable interests. Any interest in Claire that are not on your registers? Okay, thank you. Minutes of the last meeting on the 8th of March 2023. I'm happy to propose those. Do I have a seconder?
Councillor Nellens, I'll second.
Thank you very much, Ian. We have no public questions for this meeting and no member questions for this meeting. So to my knowledge, and I'm looking at Amanda, we've not had anything from scrutiny either. So no. Moving on to item number 7, which is the All-Age Carers Strategy Review 2022 to 2027. Councillor Cecilia Motley.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm Cecilia Motley, portfolio holder for Adult Social Care, Public Health and Communities, and representing the Corvedale Division. I'm very pleased to bring the All-Age Carers Strategy Review before you today. The idea behind it, and a lot of work has gone into it, and I would like to congratulate Margarita Davis and her team and Laura Tyler for all the work that they've done on this, is, as it says in the synopsis, to provide a clear framework for commissioning and provision of services to support unpaid and family carers of all ages. I think it is worth pointing out that we have a lot of carers in this county. We actually have a higher than average number of carers, and we have quite a large number of them that are young carers between the ages of 5 and 18. And we are very careful to make sure that they are supported as much as we can. And support for them is delivered by an external agency called Crossroads Together Young Carer Support, who can provide them with respite and support and awareness, so that awareness can be raised about the role of young carers in schools and the pressures that they can be under, trying to combine schools with different roles. There's a school project officer that attends school just during term times, supporting known young carers and raising awareness with school staff and pupils to identify more young carers, because it is terribly important that we know who is a carer and what kind of support they need. Also, it's worth pointing out that under the Children and Families Act, parent carers of children under 18 years old with complex needs have a right to assessment and are supported again by Shropshire Council's Children and Young People Service. So that's another cohort which are which need quite a lot of support as well. The whole forgive me because I'm kind of fiddling around with different bits of paper here. Lots of very interesting notes, but the thing is that if I actually repeated them all to you, we'd be here until lunchtime, I think. One of the most important things is to maintain carers' health and well-being so that they can continue providing care and support, but at the same time it's very important that they're able to live their own lives. So the All-Age Carer Strategy sets out how we will work to improve carer awareness, identification, information and support for carers of all ages in Shropshire, not only throughout the whole health and social care sector, but also through the education and business sectors, both very important. And by achieving our strategic objectives in this review, we aim to improve the health and well-being of carers, the people they care for, and also, as a secondary, help reduce the demand on health and social care services. Health colleagues are really best placed to identify carers at an early stage, so we do rely on our GPs as an important first point of contact for encouraging carers not only to identify themselves, but also to get involved. And they're in a good position to identify and support patients who are carers due to their long-term relationship with patients. It's also worth pointing out that a lot of carers don't regard themselves as carers because they're looking after a family member, and for them it's a this is a natural activity for them. So these are ones that we actually need to keep quite an eye on to make sure that they're not becoming overwhelmed. So I think the report is pretty clear here. It's well laid out. I think it's quite clear about the objectives. I would commend it to Cabinet, and I'd ask you to agree the recommendation 3, that Cabinet agree the adoption of the all-age carers strategy review, which goes from 2022 to 2027, and endorse the core objectives of the strategy, which are attached as Appendix 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Motley. Do I have a seconder for that?
Yes, Councillor Rob Gittins, portfolio holder for culture and digital. Happy to second.
Thank you, Rob. Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Chairman. Congratulations on it. Yes, and it is there. And carers are needed for everybody and nobody. We don't know the number of carers, and it has been noted to me that the carer members listed on the census results is different to the ones that we know about. So there are a number of carers out there who we have no knowledge of at present. And is there any action plan which will be published with this to go with it? This is the framework, the strategy, yeah. This is what's needed, but how will it be implemented? And hopefully, even in our present constrained condition, we can provide the resources that are needed to actually put this strategy into operation. So it's really the action plan, and this lays down the strategy, but how is it going to be implemented and how is it going to be operated?
You should find it all in the appendices, but I will ask Margarita if she'd like to comment as the author of the report. Morning.
Hello. Morning. Yes, there is an action plan. So we have drafted an action plan, and well, we did it during the working group. So we had a working group to draft the strategy, and at the same time we were working on an action plan as well. It is quite a large action plan, and we're in the process at the moment of sort of splitting it into manageable chunks, if you like. So we're going to be splitting it so that parent carers, for an example, there will be an action plan for parent carers, and hopefully we'll be able to get an organisation perhaps involved who will be able to lead on it, and we will do that to make sure the action plan is more easily sorry, I can't think of the word, more easily applied, really, so that we can actually make those actions and see how we can measure to make sure that we are making a difference.
Yeah, thank you, Margarita, and that makes perfect sense to me. Because,
good, Chairman. Could I just say, with regards to the figures, yes, Roger, I take your point, but at the same time, the census figures were from 2021. We're now 2023. These things change all the time. It is quite hard to nail down the figures at any one time.
I think what this does tell us, and I'm sure everybody around the table would say the same thing, that our role as councillors in the community, we will come across people on a daily basis probably who, as Councillor Motley said, are carers but don't see themselves as that. And I suppose what I'm saying to you is, let's make it our duty to ensure that if we know about them, that they know about us. I think that's in effect what I'm saying.
Yeah, if I can, Chairman. Yeah, I know one of the results of the COVID is, especially for the younger carers, they didn't go into schools, and it's the schools who provide a lot of the information for the under 18s there. So yeah, I understand that.
Yes, there's been quite a lot of comment about that actually just recently in the news. You're quite right, Roger.
Thank you. Laura, bring in Laura Tyler.
Morning all. So I'm Laura Tyler, Assistant Director for Joint Commissioning. Just to add on the comments around, identifying carers. So we recognise that it's a significant piece of work. So when we are talking about this with scrutiny, for example, actually out of that, we felt that a communications plan to accompany the strategy was really, really important. So we talked about how we could engage with parish councils and how they could, exactly as you said, Chair, spread the word and try and get more people identified. And also as part of obviously care is really quite a key theme underneath the Shropshire plan, and underneath Shropshire plan in terms of the our service plan, we've got targets to really improve our register, to increase the numbers on our register. That is increasing constantly. We are seeing increased numbers that Margarita and the team are pulling together. So that is a good trajectory forward. Yes, we've got a long way to go, but we're heading in the right direction. So just wanted to let the cabinet aware of that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Laura. Okay, I don't have any other hands in the room. We have the recommendation proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to item number 8, which is introducing a charge for events on the highway involving temporary traffic regulation orders. Councillor Richard Marshall.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Richard Marshall, portfolio holder for highways and regulatory services. As part of the Shropshire plan, we encourage healthy economy, and we're very much supportive of events that bring money into the local economy. However, some of those events do involve TTROs, temporary traffic regulation orders, for the road closures. And in compiling those TTROs, it does take a considerable amount of officers' time, dependent on the complexity and the length of time of the closure. So this report is a way to look at how we can recover those costs. I'm going to stress it's not about us making profit, it is about us recovering the costs of officers' times in implementing those orders. I know this came to Cabinet before, and it was spoken about in different areas of the community that were being considered for charging. That is not the case. This is only for profit-making organisations, and in having a look at some of the events, there are some very healthy profits out there from corporate organisations that do request the road closures. So it is therefore only fair that we look to a way to redeem the costs that we're incurring. So I will I'll commend the recommendations to Cabinet 3.1, 3.2, that we put the report out for a consultation, and then following that consultation that it will return back to Cabinet to be assessed from there further.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Do I have a second of that?
Councillor Gwilym Butler, portfolio holder for finance and corporate resources. Happy to formally second and reserve my right.
Thank you. Councillor Evans. Sorry, I'll put my mic back on. Councillor Evans and Councillor Buckley.
Right. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this. And I appreciate there needs to be some charge, especially for the commercial organisations. But I'm unsure of what charge is actually going to be used, because as I read it, the officers are given authority to actually vary the charges depending upon the amount of work involved in them, which there. So I'm not sure how a consultation is going to work if somebody who is organising something doesn't know how much they'll pay. It'll be up to them when they actually negotiate with the officer how much is going to cost them. But I see in 7.1 about events on the highways we call TTRO, and about annual shows such as the flower show, but regular and local market events I see is listed there. There are some in Shrewsbury, there's some in other market towns, and the essence is on market towns. So are regular and local market events going to be charged? Because also in the next sentence it says organisers include but are not restricted to town and parish councils, private community-led and charitable organisations, television and film companies. So are you putting town and parish councils in the same category as film companies? And I'm not sure about the wording on that channel.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Julia?
Yeah, thank you. I can understand why you might want to recoup some costs.
I don't understand why that leads you to generate £25,000 income to fill what is presumably a hole in your budget. And I'm worried that you're doing that at the cost of our thriving local economy. I'm glad you referred to the Shropshire Plan, because the Shropshire Plan is very clear. It says we'll develop Shropshire as a vibrant destination that attracts people to live in, work in, learn and visit. Specifically, there will be more high quality cultural activities for you, your family and friends to enjoy. And if we have a look at our tourism strategy, the strategic objective, which has been prioritised with all our partners and tourism partners, is to support the visitor economy through promoting year-round events and activities, local businesses, food, drinks and crafts, to work closely with businesses, attractions, communities and other tourism bodies. It doesn't feel like you're working with businesses, it feels like you're putting a deterrent in place, which will ultimately lead to a reduction in events in our county. We're supposed to be all about increasing the visitors to our market towns, increasing dwell time, making them a destination. We've just put a barrier in their way. I phoned a few organisations this morning to ask them how they feel about your proposal. And one very large events company described this as the nail in the coffin. They said all their costs are going up at the moment. The costs of hiring a marquee, costs of all their energy costs, staffing costs, everything has gone up. This they describe as the nail in the coffin. Luckily, they do hold some events in Telford, and they say they'll be able to go ahead with their events. We must consider the impact on our economy and therefore our local population, and not keep trying to fill a hole in the budget.
Okay.
Councillor Richard Marshall.
Okay, thank you both for your questions. I'll cover your question off first, Roger. There is a scale of charges in one of the appendices. It also says there that there is officer discretion. So there are indicative charges. Now, as I said when I was presenting the report, there are various complexities that are involved, and that's why we've tried to set it out with numbers of people as well. It could be the length of the time. So if it's a one-day event, that TTRO will take less time to actually formulate than if it's a 2 or 3 day event, for instance. So there is officer discretion in it. And that's what I would say to yourself, Roger. On your point, Julia, I agree with you, the Shropshire Plan. It does look at healthy economy, absolutely it does. And we do things to encourage the economy and tourism and some of these events. And it's nice that you actually rang some of the event organisers, because I've had several ring me and contact me, even by Facebook Messenger, which I found quite bizarre, but hey ho. And I've spoken with them as well. And each one of them tells me on some of the significant events, they have to pay for things like crowd control and the barriers if they've got crowds there, for instance. And as I've spoken to them, when you start to look at, say, crowd control and the costs that are incurred with that, the actual closing of the highway would come under that sort of banding anyway. So when I'm setting out the costs, if I was an event organiser, if I'm looking at my costs and the profits, I would actually be building in the highway closure within that costing as well. And just to come back on the point about plugging the budget, it's not about plugging the budget in any way, shape or form, but what it is actually saying is it's costing us money at the moment. As I said at the beginning, and I really need to stress this, it's not about us using this as an income stream. We've got officers' time that's being taken to generate the TTROs. And also as well, it's not just the paperwork side, there's a lot of advice that we talk to event organisers. So we're actually doing it, and it should generate £25,000. That's not a profit revenue. It is actually the covering of the cost of officers' time to do that. And also in looking at this, and when we've done the compilation of this, and you mentioned Telford and Wrekin, a lot of the neighbouring authorities do actually apply charges for TTROs, and some of them in a lot more rigorous manner, than what we're suggesting here, that it is just commercial operations. So whilst I, as a businessman myself in my normal life, I will always balk at having an additional cost put in there, I would also be realistic, and I would say, yes, that's a fair associated cost, and I would build that in my costings for setting up the event.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Can I also point out that this is just to go out to consultation, so all of those points can be made by event organisers on the situation on the paper. Sorry. Okay, so I have a proposer, I have a seconder.
Chairman.
Sorry.
Hmm?
Yes, sorry.
What? It's the, this 7.1, if it's going out for consultation. I'll read the whole sentence out. Organisers include, but are not restricted to, semicolon, town and parish councils, semicolon, private, semicolon, community-led and charitable organisations, semicolon, television and film companies, full stop. So are town and parish councils going to be charged if they organise events
Can I,
for
can I,
like a market one?
can I interrupt you,
think
Roger?
that question will come back.
7.1 is background.
Yeah.
7.1 basically says, you know, events on the highways can be X, Y, and Z.
That's for an example.
That's for an example. It's not saying that that's the categories that the charges.
Okay, all right.
All right.
So that's,
Leader.
thank you for
Yeah,
that.
push can.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, 7.1, and I really do want to clear this point up
Yeah.
because of the confusion that was surrounding this report initially. This is only, the consultation is only suggesting that we apply charges to profit generating organisations. If we have town and parish council events or any sort of parades, there will be no charges to them. 7.1 is absolutely examples of why we would be closing roads, and it gives a list and example of those.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I have a proposer, I have a seconder, all those in favour? Thank you very much, Councillor Marshall. You can put that out to consultation. Okay, so moving on to item number 9, which is the implementation of the allocations policy and scheme transitional arrangements. Now, please bear with me, Cabinet, because thanks to the to both Lucy and also to Laura, who've given me some notes for this report this morning. Both of, as I said earlier on, both of these reports are time sensitive, so I didn't want to hold them up, but unfortunately Dean is unable to be here to present them. So the Social Housing Regulation Bill, the purpose of the report in front of us is to update us on the progress of the Social Housing Regulation Bill, setting out the Council's key responsibilities under the new Social Housing Regulatory regime. The report sets out our responsibilities in regards to delivery of the Regulator of Social Housing's consumer standards and outlines the actions required by the Council to ensure, as the landlord of the retained council stock, it has the necessary oversight and monitoring arrangements in place for Star Housing in order to respond to the forthcoming proactive regulatory regime, which is set to begin in 2024. The Regulator of Social Housing will consult on the consumer standards by the summer of 2023, already identifying a number of things the standards should cover, that being safety, quality, neighbourhood, transparency, engagement and accountability and tenure. Housing provider boards, and in the case of a local authority, we as councillors are responsible for ensuring that consumer standards are met. As set out in the report, it is the Council, as the regulated entity, that will be subject of any inspection by the Regulator of Consumer Standards. Therefore, it needs to be assured through its governance and monitoring arrangements that the standards are being met by Star Housing. We are being asked today to consider the report and to receive further updates on the implementation of changes to the new regulatory regime as they emerge, and it is asked to note the responsibilities of the Council with regards to the consumer standards, in particular requirements to maintain an oversight of the housing stock, understand the performance of the arm's length management organisation, and understand the compliance and legislative requirements. Have I what? Sorry, have I jumped one? Oh, never mind. Anyway, oh right, I'm sorry. I've got to the wrong one. I do apologise. So yes, if that's item 11, I do apologise. It's not item 9, as I said. But so I think that the situation is, and as I said, I do apologise that I've had to bring this report to you today, but it's just unfortunate circumstances. I've been through this report. It is a process report. I've also had discussions with Jane Trethewey, who's the Assistant Director for the housing side, which includes Star Housing. I know that Councillor Buckley is also sitting on the board. This is something we've had to bring to Cabinet to go forward in the future with these new regulations. I'm happy to propose it. I think, if I'm right, Ian, you were going to second this particular report, item number 11.
Yeah, Councillor Nellens, I'll second.
Thank you very much. Any comments on that report? Roger, please do say something. Thank
Yeah,
you.
okay, yeah, it's just a reassurance, I think. In the report on page 60, it says actions to review and monitor the impact of the services. What I would like assurances of is following the implementation of the revised policy will be subject to robust continuous monitoring, both in terms of allocations of council-owned stock and housing association compliance. The nominations agreeing if those in greatest need will be allocated.
That's the other report.
Yeah, that's nice.
Sorry, that's the other report, Roger. I do apologise. I've got them out of order. This is about the social housing regulation
right.
bill. I do apologise.
Okay, yeah, so, yeah.
But I've got a comment on that one for later on because I have conversations about that.
Well, 11, okay.
Yeah, sorry, that's entirely my fault. I do
No.
apologise.
Right.
Julia, have you got any questions on that one?
Well, just to say, as you know, I am on the board
Yeah.
of Star Housing, and I circulated the report to the board, who were aware of it.
Yeah.
And it's very welcome. You know, this
Yeah.
is part of the new phase of delivery. They are looking to work closer with the council, and
Yeah.
they're already making a lot of changes and improvements in the way that they are working to regulation. So it's a very positive thing.
I have to say, in the last 24 hours, Julia, I know more about housing now than I did before. But no, and I think that the information that I've had back as well from the officers dealing with this is that they really welcome that closer relationship. Yes, it's arm's length, but it doesn't have to be as arm's length as it has been in the past. So thank you for that. I have a proposer. I have a second for item number 11. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Right, let's see if I can get it right this time. Let's go back to item number 9, Roger, and I know what question you're going to ask. Information and allocations of policy, item number 9. So, again, my notes say, in October 22, Cabinet, I remember this, approved and adopted a revised housing allocations policy and scheme. In order for the policy and scheme to be implemented within the original timetable set out in the October report, we're now asked to approve transitional arrangements relating to how and where existing applicants will be placed on the revised housing register in relation to local connection, qualifying criteria, registration date, and applicants who are sharing facilities with another household. As set out in the October 22 Cabinet report, the timetable for implementing the policy was Q1 23-24. However, unfortunately, due to delays on the part of the software company, in order for this timescale to be achieved, it is proposed that transitional arrangements are put in place. The revised allocations policy and scheme seeks to ensure that social housing is allocated to those applicants in greatest housing need. Therefore, it is important to implement the policy and scheme in line with the original timescale. However, in order for this to happen, we have to approve the transitional arrangements. These arrangements seek to ensure that the policy and scheme is implemented on time and that existing applicants are not unfairly negatively impacted. Transitional arrangements will remain in place for a period of up to 2 years. Details of the transitional arrangements you have probably seen are at section 7, and we're asked to approve the proposed transitional arrangements. Again, this is a situation it is unfortunate in a way because we had hoped to do this in one lump in the first quarter of 23-24, but that problem with the software is not going to be resolved. So the housing team were very keen to get this transitional arrangement put in place as soon as possible so that our our people who are requiring housing are not unfairly impacted. Roger, would you like to ask your question?
Thank you, Chair. My mistake.
No, well, mine too. So.
Right. Yeah, it's on page 60, and it's actions to review and monitor the impact of it. And it says in the middle of that paragraph, and I'll read it out. I'll try and trace it. Following the implementation, it will be continuously monitored and robustly looked at to ensure that nomination agreements are complied with and those in greatest need are allocated the housing that is wanted. That's a summation of that sentence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I must admit I was in a funny sort of way. I was really heartened by this coming forward so quickly because the team immediately realised that we weren't going to be able to do what we said we were going to do in 23-24, and are adamant that we don't, put anybody at risk. So I will take that message back to Laura Fisher, who again unfortunately wasn't able to be at Cabinet this morning, but I will take that message back and get an answer for you as to how that is going to work. Roger. Julia?
Yes, thank you. It's a similar comment really. So as I understand it, non-local applicants without a local connection will effectively be downgraded and have fewer opportunities to secure housing in Shropshire. And it is described later on as a savings initiative, and one of the reasons it has to be rushed through today is to start making the savings. I find that a little bit worrying. But in particular, I'd like some reassurance that another group at risk would be those fleeing domestic violence. So logically and often, those fleeing domestic violence do need to change area for obvious reasons. I don't see anything that suggests that they would continue to be protected because they may not have a local connection, they may not be a veteran. Could I just seek reassurance that they are covered in some way? And if that's not yet written in the report, could it be looked at, please?
Yeah, I think I've seen that somewhere actually. So maybe that came up in conversation, Julia. So I will ask to get you that information.
I do believe there are national requirements, so it would be.
They're unlike, and I think that's where we heard. I think there is a situation with them where actually chances are they're not going to be housed locally, are they? Mm. So I will get that answer to you because I don't have the answer here now, unfortunately.
Thank you.
We'll get that for you. Okay. I'm happy to propose that. Have I got a seconder for that one?
Yeah. Councillor Cecilia Motley, I'm happy to second and just say that I too welcome this report. In a previous life, I've had many lives, more than a cat, I think, in this council. I worked with Laura Fisher on this very subject, the whole issue of allocations of housing, because we recognised that it simply wasn't working well. It was taking too long to process, and it really needed a shake-up and a look at. So I'm absolutely delighted to see that this work is carrying on. It's a shame that the software issue was slightly meant that we have to do this on a sort of temporary process, but I still think it's a very good thing to do, and I welcome the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nellens has just pointed out to me that there is, I think under section 11, did we say that there is a sentence that says obviously this criteria can be altered in exceptional circumstances, but I would have thought that DB would be mentioned specifically, so I'll come back on that one. Okay, I would propose that I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Right, let's get back to the portfolio holders. Item number 10. Councillor Rob Gittins.
Thank you very much, Leader.
Oh gosh, I just thought of something. I'm terribly sorry, Chairman, but I wonder whether I ought to step out at this point. I don't have any direct connection with Windmill Hill, but my family might. So should I step out?
Yeah, we'll register that one. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Motley, for confirming.
Sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
I have no idea.
Councillor Rob Gittins.
Thank you very much. Much Wenlock Town Council has requested delegation authority from Shropshire Council to dedicate Windmill Hill, Much Wenlock, as a local nature reserve. Shropshire Council has the power to give this consent. This report to Cabinet clearly says that declaring Windmill Hill as a local nature reserve will offer the following benefits. It will improve local quality of life, health and well-being, create opportunities for education, enjoyment and recreation, helping to attract visitors and preserve links with the local communities past. Safeguard local ecosystem services, the benefits that nature provides for people, such as reducing carbon in the atmosphere or absorbing surface water. It will protect and enhance the natural heritage as a key part of building sustainable communities, raise the natural conservation and recreation, in the trust to recognise the site's wildlife value, recognise local community involvement, protect within the planning system from future development. Of course, all this feeds quite nicely into the Shropshire plan. In terms of the management of Windmill Hill, there will be no change following the delegation. The site will continue to be managed by Much Wenlock Windmill Trust, who have a lease on Windmill Hill until 2100. Poor blimey, I'll be 116 years old then. There are no financial implications borne on Shropshire Council for this delegation, and the reports the full support of a local member, Councillor Dan Thomas, who I know is itching to speak on it. And of course the town council. So if I could ask the cabinet to approve the recommendations in section 3 of the report, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gittins. Do I have a seconder for that?
Councillor Richard Marshall, portfolio holder for Highways and Regulatory Services, and I'm extremely happy to second this report.
And as Councillor Gittins said, Councillor Dan Thomas is itching to speak to us. Councillor Thomas, over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Cabinet members, thank you for letting me address this important agenda item today. Windmill Hill is a beautiful landmark steeped in the history of Much Wenlock. The windmill stands high above the town, looking directly at Williambrook School and watching over Much Wenlock. As a child growing up here, its steepness was always used by murderous PE teachers set in the cross-country route. It is used for recreation and education for people of all ages. This book, written by local resident Mike Norrie in 2010, records the windmill project and a comprehensive history of this site right from medieval times. In 2018, I, with a committee, lit a beacon to commemorate 100 years since the end of World War I, where a military bugler played the last post, and the beacon shone for the whole town to see. Its nature and its beauty are shown throughout the year, but especially in summer, where thousands of wild orchids bloom. A team of volunteers has managed the Windmill Hill with the Windmill Trust for many years, and the adoption as a local nature reserve will support their work. This designation will help attract more visitors and funding opportunities to safeguard its future. Therefore, I call on you to grant Much Wenlock Town Council the delegated power to designate the windmill as a local nature reserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. And it's quite odd you should say about the murderous PE teacher, because I actually met one of them who said that Windmill Hill used to be used for cross-country events, and especially for cross-country events for young lads who didn't want to do cross-country events. I'm assuming you weren't one of those, Councillor Thomas. Okay. I have Julie?
Yeah, just to say, so Julia Buckley, Labour leader, but I also represent Bridge North West and Tadsley. Many residents from Bridge North travel to Much Wenlock for walking, and Windmill Hill is really well used by 3 generations in my family, and certainly by many residents. So it'd be really welcome to have this as a nature reserve. So it'll be appreciated by quite a wide radius of walkers. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly is a popular one. Thank you very much. I have a proposer, I have a seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. You may go back to the Town Council and give them the good news to them. Okay, so we've already done item 11, no thanks to me. Moving on to item number 12, and it's nice to have 2 really smiley events at the end of the Cabinet meeting, isn't it? Because the next item, which again I'm going to introduce, is Monkmoor Lodge and Shropshire Youth Association, and I'm delighted actually the Chief Executive of Shropshire Youth Association, Richard Parks, is actually with us in the room today. We, as a council, issued a cat lease on the building in Monkmoor quite a few years ago now, I think it was. And the building was pretty much, I think Richard might frown at me for saying this, but it is a demountable, isn't it, really? Recently, Shropshire Youth Association has applied for and has received a significant grant. And this is a variation to the cat lease, which basically gives them the opportunity to demolish the demountable and to build a new purpose-built building. I am happy to propose this item. Do I have a seconder for that item?
Yes, so Councillor Rob Gittins happy to second.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nick Barnsley, did you, as a trustee, did you want to say a few words on this? Yeah. Do join us at the table.
Thank you, Leader. Just a couple of extra things. I think those members of Cabinet who looked at the report will see that it is actually making, albeit a modest, contribution towards savings on the revenue budget. I think that's an important point. I think the request now for a long lease of 99 years, I mean, not much short of paying the freehold, is needed, because we're not talking anymore about second-hand demountable buildings. We're talking about a brand new purpose-built youth centre on two stories, and it will be the headquarters for SYA. A planning application, I'm told, will be submitted this week or next week, and subject, obviously, to that going through the normal processes, work will start, hopefully, at the back end of this year, and will be completed about 12 months from now. I just wanted to add a couple of things. I was a trustee of SYA many years ago, and I can remember saying to Richard Parkes, look, you cannot carry on being almost entirely dependent on grants from Shropshire Council. And it's been very hard work, and it isn't something you can do overnight, and it hasn't been overnight. But SYA is now entirely self-funded, and that, I think, is pretty commendable, frankly. The substantial grant funding that SYA has now been offered is very much a tribute to the hard work put in by Richard Parkes, and also a recognition, I think, of SYA's status, not just locally here in the West Midlands, but nationally. I hope very much, Leader, that Cabinet will support the recommendations.
Thank you, Nick, and I echo what you said there today, and I know I was hearing some echoing going around the table as well. The recommendations, just to be clear on these, so Cabinet approves the principle of a 99-year lease that includes provision to demolish the existing demountable building and rebuild with a permanent community structure. And the second recommendation is that we grant the delegated authority to the Head of Property Development in consultation with Councillor Carroll to finalise the terms of the lease and complete the transaction. Everybody okay about that? Yep. Julia?
Yes, can I just send some words from Councillor Pam Mosley, who represents the area. She completely supports this. It's most welcome, and she also described the current building as very poor state, a demountable that was moved from elsewhere and at the end of its useful life. She does ask where SYA will move where it will operate from during the closures, and she explains that Shrewsbury Town Council is arranging to hold its youth club at Cromwell Hall. So I'm sure the Town Council would work closely with you to support any interim arrangements.
Yeah. I think the initial solution to the problem isn't now viable. Richard can perhaps enlarge on that, but I think there's another temporary solution on hand.
Yeah.
Is that the case, Richard? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we were hoping to move into the Brantano shop, which has been empty for 7 years. But fortunately for Shrewsbury, it looks like a commercial provider is now going to take that. So that's off the table. So we're going to ask Shropshire Council if they would consider
something else,
temporarily housing us in the Riverside or somewhere like that. It's just to store what we've got, because we'll reuse a lot of furniture we've got.
Okay. Yep. Thank you, Richard. Okay. Yes, Councillor Evans?
I congratulate Richard and SYA as chairman of the parish council, where SYA assists in providing youth facilities there. It is appreciated, the work they do. So to have a building like this to work from, I think can only add to where it goes in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. So I have a proposer, which was me. I have a seconder, which is Rob. All those in favour? Thank you very much indeed. Members, that brings us to the end of the Cabinet meeting today. Thank you for your attendance.